trying to get it for my family. Yeah, we may messed up on the way. I need y'all to pray for me. I don't need y'all to pass judgment. Please keep your opinions to yourself. For real.
How old you
Because I gotta work again.
No, how old you turning on the 3rd? What age?
You know I got like, what's that called? You know how like when, you know, no, you know how like when.
This isn't just another celebrity meltdown. This is a story that's shaken the internet to its core. Chrisean Rock, once praised for her raw energy and wild authenticity, is now at the center of a storm no one saw coming. Reports are exploding across social media that Child Protective Services allegedly found her baby dangerously close to illegal substances in a hotel room. Fans are horrified. Critics are furious. And the world is asking, how did things get this bad? What was supposed to be a quiet night has turned into a legal nightmare, with CPS reportedly circling in closer than ever before. The whispers of foster care, court orders, and public humiliation are getting louder by the minute. This isn't a storyline she can laugh off or a scandal she can go live about. This is real life on this time. She may not be able to talk her way out of it. The night that flipped everything upside down didn't arrive with warning lights or police sirens. It started like hundreds of other nights in Chrisean's world. Loud music, laughing friends, Instagram lives, and that wild, unpredictable energy that made people love and hate her all at once. She was staying in a mid-range hotel, not some Beverly Hills penthouse, but a place where the cameras couldn't follow her every second. Or at least that's what she thought. Just before midnight, her phone lit up with hearts and fire emojis as she danced around the hotel room with a drink in one hand and her phone in the other. She was talking fast, cussing out haters, hyping herself up like she always does. But what the thousands watching didn't realize was that just off camera, her baby lay nearby. The music was blasting. Her friends were laughing. And for the first time in a long time, the universe decided it had enough of the circus. Neighbors on the same floor later said they had heard a baby crying for almost 40 minutes straight. Not this soft, fussy kind of crying, no. This was sharp, desperate, heart-wrenching crying that made people glance at each other through hotel doors. Some guests tried to ignore it. Others got uncomfortable. But eventually, one of them picked up the phone and called the front desk. The clerk at the desk reportedly called local authorities and CPS emergency responders, unsure of what exactly was happening upstairs, but knowing something was wrong. When the knock came at her door, Chrisean was still laughing with a friend. She opened it, half distracted, phones still live, thousands of viewers commenting rapid fire. She thought it was hotel staff complaining about the noise. What she didn't expect was CPS investigators and local officers standing there. And behind them, a hotel manager with wide, nervous eyes. Witnesses say the moment the door opened, the vibe shifted from chaotic fun to frozen panic. Officers reportedly told her they had received a call about a baby in distress. She tried to brush it off with that signature laugh, saying the baby was fine, just fussy. But when they stepped inside, they allegedly saw what the internet would soon explode over. The child near dangerous substances on a hotel nightstand, surrounded by clutter, loud music, and chaos. One officer later told reporters off the record, "It was like stepping into a party with a baby in the middle of it." The baby? Confused and overwhelmed, was picked up immediately and checked by paramedics on site. CPS began taking notes, asking questions, and photographing the room. Every camera flash was another nail in the coffin of the image she had tried to build, wild but loving, chaotic but caring. In that moment, it didn't look like love. It looked like neglect. Within hours, the hotel incident turned into headlines across every gossip blog, hip-hop news page, and trending Twitter thread. Chrisean Rock, investigated by CPS, blared across posts, screenshots, and YouTube thumbnails. And what hurt her the most wasn't just the public backlash, it was that this time she couldn't say it was fake. The authorities had already filed their report by morning. Fan pages and critics were pulling up receipts. Old videos of her ignoring the baby's cries while she argued on live. Clips where the child flinched when she raised her hand too quickly. Moments when her focus was everywhere except where it should have been. People who once hyped her up were now saying they saw this coming. She's been spiraling for months. One viral tweet said, "That baby deserves better." Her core fans tried to defend her, saying people were too quick to judge a young mother under pressure. But even they struggled to explain away the image of a baby lying feet away from dangerous substances. Meanwhile, CPS reportedly placed the child in temporary protective care that night while they began their formal investigation. This wasn't some celebrity PR stunt that could be patched with a carefully worded apology. This was the state stepping in. For Chrisean, panic set in fast. The girl who had built her whole identity on being unshakable is now on the verge of losing the one thing she claimed mattered most. She went live again less than 24 hours later, mascara smudged, eyes red, voice cracking as she screamed at commenters for lying on her name. "They trying to take my baby, bro?" She yelled. "Y'all don't even understand what I'm going through. I'm a good mom. I love my son." But the more she spoke, the less convincing it sounded. She wasn't talking about the investigation. She wasn't calmly explaining the situation. She was yelling at trolls, crying about betrayal, and calling people fake. It wasn't a picture of a mother in control. It was a picture of a woman in freefall. Meanwhile, people who had been silent started speaking. Neighbors from previous apartments claimed they had heard fights and late-night screaming for months. Old friends whispered to gossip outlets about her chaotic home life. Former fans stitched TikToks with old clips and warning signs. It was like a storm she couldn't stop, and for once, this wasn't the one creating it. Blueface, as expected, made the situation worse. He posted smug, petty remarks online, distancing himself from the situation while simultaneously adding fuel to the fire. He reminded everyone he had claimed the baby might not be his. He mocked her, made jokes, and then went quiet, again exactly the kind of cold detachment that left her to deal with the mess alone. CPS, meanwhile, was moving quickly. They weren't reacting to gossip. They had evidence, reports, a baby to protect. And that meant the next steps wouldn't play out on Instagram. They would play out in court for the first time. It wasn't Chrisean controlling the narrative. It wasn't the fans, the blogs, or Blueface. It was the system. And the system doesn't care about clout. In just 12 hours. She went from laughing in a hotel room to sitting alone in silence, realizing she might lose everything. It didn't matter how many followers she had. It didn't matter how many people had told her she was real for being messy. When it came to the safety of a child, none of that mattered anymore. Outside that hotel, cameras flashed as she slipped into a black SUV. Hair pulled back, sunglasses covering her red eyes. The crowd outside wasn't cheering. They weren't fans waiting for a selfie. They were reporters, gossip bloggers, and people holding their phones up, recording her fall from grace in real time. What began as just another night of partying had become the first step in the most serious fight of her life. By the time the sun came up the next morning, the internet was already on fire. Her name wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. Clips from that hotel night had been saved, reposted, analyzed, and slowed down frame by frame. Blogs were uploading exclusive updates. YouTubers were turning her pain into hour-long breakdowns. And TikTokers were stitching the live footage with dramatic voiceovers, like it was a Netflix docuseries. But this time, it wasn't about messy relationship drama or celebrity beef. This time, the conversation was centered around one brutal, unavoidable question. Is the baby safe? Her followers were divided into two armies. One side pleaded for understanding, saying she was under pressure, dealing with mental health issues, and surrounded by fake friends. The other side, louder, sharper, and angrier, said, this had been a long time coming. People have been warning about this. The CPS team working the case reportedly began pulling everything they could find. Every piece of footage she'd posted herself. Every call they'd received from concerned neighbors. Every hospital report and medical note they had on file since the child's birth. She lived her life like a reality show. Now, that reality was being turned into a case file. And then came the interviews. Hotel staff spoke to local outlets. Witnesses described the sound of a baby crying in the night. Someone who claimed to be on the same floor said, "I'll never forget that sound." It wasn't normal crying. It was screaming. Their statements spread like wildfire, turning a troubling night into a viral scandal. Chrisean's response was instant and loud. She jumped on Instagram Live, her voice trembling, eyes bloodshot from crying. But it wasn't the calm statement of a mother fighting to protect her child. It was a storm of emotions, rage, denial, fear, blame. She cursed at people calling her unfit, swore she loved her baby, called everyone fake, and shouted that CPS had no right to take anything from her. But here's the thing, the more she talked, the worse it looked. She wasn't saying she'd fix the situation or cooperate with CPS. She was screaming about haters, followers, betrayal. It sounded like she was trying to save her image, not her baby. Blueface made things worse, as usual. He posted a series of smug tweets and went live himself saying, I told y'all she was doing too much." He mocked her pain, distanced himself from responsibility, and made it clear he wasn't stepping in to help. And that cold, detached reaction only fueled public anger. The hashtags #ProtectJunior and #CP's investigations started, trending on X and TikTok. Comment sections were overflowing with people who didn't even follow her but had seen the viral clips. "I used to laugh at her wild lives," one user wrote. "Now I just feel bad for the baby." But it wasn't just fans talking anymore. Legal analysts, former CPS workers, and family law attorneys began appearing on live streams and interviews to explain how cases like this typically unfold. When there's an incident involving illegal substances and a child, CPS doesn't wait, one expert said. They act fast, and they collect everything: social media, witness statements, medical records. The ugly truth was clear. This wasn't something she could talk her way out of. This wasn't a PR scandal that could be cleaned up with an apology video or a teary Instagram post. This was the law. In the background, CPS was already preparing their temporary custody petition. They didn't want excuses. They wanted a plan. Either she complied with every demand they laid out, or they'd move forward with removing the baby permanently. Parenting classes, random drug testing, home visits, supervised care-free box had to be checked. And then came the photos. Screenshots from the leaked medical records started circulating on forums and gossip pages, claiming that the baby had been born with health complications, some allegedly connected to prenatal substance exposure. No one could fully confirm the authenticity. But the whispers alone added gasoline to a fire that was already burning hot. Her supporters begged people to stop spreading leaked documents, saying it was cruel to expose a child's private information. But the damage was done. Every new leak made it harder for her to defend herself. By day 2, paparazzi were waiting outside the hotel. Reporters were calling her relatives. Former friends were giving interviews. Everyone had something to say, and most of it wasn't good. Her chaos, once contained within Instagram lives and late-night rants, had spilled into the real world, and the real world had consequences. Meanwhile, she was breaking down behind the scenes. Multiple sources close to her told gossip outlets that she hadn't slept, hadn't eaten properly, and was in pure panic mode. But instead of quietly fixing the problem, she kept going live, feeding the story. It was like watching someone set their own house on fire while screaming about the smoke. And the scariest part? CPS doesn't work on celebrity timelines. They don't care if the internet moves on to the next scandal tomorrow. They build their cases piece by piece, and once they make a decision, Spinal fans who had followed her since her early reality TV days said this felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. The woman who once seemed untouchable was unraveling right in front of them. But this time, it wasn't just about her. It was about a baby caught in the middle of a storm he never asked for. The world had seen Chrisean at her wildest. But now they were seeing her at her most vulnerably and maybe her most dangerous. The internet held its breath, waiting to see what CPS would do next as the investigation gained momentum. Chrisean's world began collapsing in slow motion. For years, she had been able to ride the chaos, turning every scandal into another trending moment, every meltdown into content. But this time, it was different. This time, she couldn't flip the narrative. This wasn't about haters, exes, or online trolls. This was about the state versus a mother, and that's a fight she couldn't win with tears. Instagram lives or music. Behind the scenes, CPS moved methodically. They weren't playing social media games. Every statement, every file, every video that could potentially indicate neglect or risk to the child was being logged, timestamped, and prepared. And the thing about Chrisean's life? She had documented nearly everything herself. No one needed to dig far. It was already there. Live stream after live stream showed chaotic scenes, loud parties, arguments, crying fits, and a baby often left in the background of the noise. People who once adored her for her rawness started admitting that maybe real wasn't enough anymore. "I used to love how she didn't fake anything," one fan posted. But this is different. This isn't just real. This is reckless. Others were far less forgiving. She's had warning after warning. One comment read, "You can't keep making excuses when a child's life is on the line." Meanwhile, insiders claim CPS was considering several options, including temporary placement with foster care if she failed to meet immediate compliance, parenting classes, supervised visits, mental health evaluations, and a stable living environment. Those weren't optional boxes. They were requirements. And every day she spent online screaming instead of showing progress made. Her case looked weaker, but Chrisean wasn't used to silence. So she did what she always does. She went live. Thousands of people tuned in to watch her cry, yell, and plead with the internet to understand her. Her face was streaked with tears. Her voice cracked as she swore she loved her son more than anything. But mixed in with those tearful declarations were accusations. She blamed the media. She blamed Blueface. She blamed fake friends. She blamed demons. At one point, she shouted, "Y'all want me to lose everything? I've been through hell for my baby. Y'all don't know what I'm dealing with. Y'all judging me like I'm not human." Her supporters flooded the comments with hearts. But the wider internet saw something else entirely: a woman spiraling under pressure, deflecting responsibility instead of facing it. Every word she spoke was clipped, shared, and dissected. Some called it heartbreaking. Others called it proof she wasn't stable enough to parent a baby right now. Blueface, as usual, couldn't resist inserting himself into the storm. He posted cryptic tweets, laughed on his own live, and once again implied the child wasn't his responsibility. But the way he smirked as the drama played out made people furious. That baby didn't ask for this mess. One viral tweet said, "Neither of them deserve to raise him." Meanwhile, CPS scheduled a home visit. According to sources close to the situation, the visit didn't exactly go as planned. The house was reportedly clean but chaotic, with friends coming and going, loud conversations, and not a trace of the quiet, stable environment Child Services wanted to see. She tried to talk her way through it, laughing nervously, telling the caseworker everything was good. But CPS isn't fooled by charm. They don't care how famous someone is or how many people defend them online. They care about stability and safety. And what they saw didn't scream stability. The internet followed every step of the case like it was a real-life series. Protect Junior accounts were made overnight. Anonymous insiders gave statements to blogs, some real, some exaggerated, but all fueling the fire. Photos and voice clips from that infamous night continued to circulate. And with each leak, the pressure on her grew heavier. She tried to ignore it at first, brushing it off as people hating. But slowly it started sinking in. The late-night lives grew quieter. The chaotic laughter turned to anxious pacing. People close to her said she'd started calling lawyers, crying about how she didn't want to lose her child. But even as fear grew, her instinct was to turn pain into spectacle. And that, ironically, was making everything worse. CPS set strict guidelines, parenting programs, therapy, proof of sobriety, supervised visits until further notice. They gave her a timeline. And if she failed to comply, they'd file for full removal. Meanwhile, gossip blogs posted interviews with former friends and associates. One former friend claimed she had seen Chrisean completely lose it around the baby. Another said she wasn't surprised by the CPS case at all. "We all knew it was a matter of time," the friend claimed. "I'm just surprised it took this long." The story had grown far bigger than she could control. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was a cultural moment, a cautionary tale playing out in real time, and whether she liked it or not. Every move she made was feeding that narrative. Then came the breaking point. CPS officially filed paperwork to have temporary custody reviewed in court. The date was set, lawyers were lined up, and the judge assigned to the case reportedly had a reputation for being no nonsense when it came to child endangerment. She could no longer cry on Instagram. She needed to show results. But deep down, people wondered, did she even know how? The night after the filing, she went live one last time before going quiet for several days. Her voice was hoarse, her face puffy from crying. "I'm not losing my baby," she whispered to the camera. "I can't. I won't. I'll do anything. But y'all don't understand how hard it is when the world already hates you." For the first time, it wasn't loud. It wasn't performative. It was raw fear. But fear alone wouldn't change the situation. Action would, and the clock was ticking, while the internet speculated, dissected, and memed her pain. CPS kept moving, quietly, efficiently, and every tick of the clock brought her closer to the courtroom where her babies would be decided the days leading. Up to the court date were the longest of Chrisean's life. She had lived through public breakups, fights, humiliating headlines, arrests, and endless online scrutiny, but nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the cold, suffocating weight of a child's custody battle with the state. For the first time, her usual armored chaos, bravado, and viral noise didn't work. She couldn't fight CPs the way she fought haters. She couldn't scream her way out of a court order. People close to her said the silence in her house felt foreign. No constant live streaming, no loud parties, no friends camped out on the couch. Just her and her thoughts. The same girl who could command tens of thousands of viewers at the tap of a button now sat in the corner of her living room, scrolling through her phone like a ghost in her own story. Every headline seemed louder. Every post about her felt like a knife. She'd made herself the main character in her own drama. But now the narrative had spun completely out of her control. Lawyers were scrambling behind the scenes. CPS wasn't backing down. Their report was thick dozens of pages of documentation. Photos from that hotel night. Statements from witnesses. Timestamps from her own live streams. Even audio clips of the baby crying in the background while she laughed with friends. There was no erasing it. There was no editing it to look better. It was evidence, and it was damning. Blueface, meanwhile, continued to play both sides. He posted memes and snide comments, acting like the situation was just another chapter in their ongoing reality show. He hinted that the baby wasn't his responsibility. He claimed he was just watching it all unfold. And that cold, careless detachment made things even worse. It painted a picture of a fractured family where no one wanted to take responsibility. The internet, of course, was eating it up. "This isn't even entertainment anymore," one viral post said. "This is sad." Another read, "I used to laugh at our lives. Now I just want that baby safe." The tone had shifted. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It was concern, outrage, judgment. And once public opinion turns like that, it's nearly impossible to get it back. 3 days before court, Chrisean finally broke her silence again. She went live in a hoodie, hair undone, voice trembling. But this wasn't the fiery, defensive girl people were used to. This was someone who looked tired, broken, scared. "I know I messed up," she whispered to the camera. "Y'all can say whatever y'all want, but I love my son. I love him more than anything. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a monster either. Y'all don't know how hard it is to have the whole world laughing at your pain. I just want my baby back home." That moment went viral, but not in the way she was used to. The comments were mixed. Some people felt sorry for her, calling it the first time she'd ever shown real vulnerability. Others said it was too little, too late. The internet isn't kind to mothers in public scandals, especially not when a child is involved. Meanwhile, CPS lawyers were preparing their statements for the judge. They weren't focused on online sympathy. Their job was simple: prove that the environment around that baby was unstable and unsafe. They had medical reports, CPS complaints going back months, screenshots of her leaving the child in questionable situations, and even clips from supporters turned critics who had once defended her. On the day of the hearing, the courthouse steps were lined with reporters, fans, and curious onlookers. Some held up signs saying #ProtectJunior, while others came just to witness the spectacle. Paparazzi cameras flashed as she stepped out of a black SUV, flanked by her lawyer and a friend. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, no big smile, just a blank stare and a shaking hand clutching the strap of her bag. Inside the courtroom, everything was quieter than the internet had ever been. No flashing lights, no loud music, no cheering crowds. Just a judge, CPS officials, lawyers, and a young mother trying to prove she deserved a second chance. The CPS attorney went first, laying out everything they had. They didn't need to exaggerate anything. The facts alone were heavy: the hotel incident, the leaked medical information, multiple neglect complaints, unstable housing, live streams with the child present during dangerous situations. They argued that while she might love her child, love alone isn't enough when safety is at stake. Her lawyer fought back hard. They painted a picture of a young woman who had grown up in chaos, who was still learning how to be a parent while under a microscope. They talked about fame, mental health, and the cruelty of the internet. They argued that she didn't need to lose her child forever. She needed help, structure, and support. When it was her turn to speak, she stood up slowly. The courtroom was silent. Even the reporters in the back stopped typing. "I know I've made mistakes," she said, voice cracking. "I know people don't see me as a good mom right now, but I love my son. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll take the classes. I'll do the tests. I'll prove it. Not for the internet, not for nobody else. For him." Tears streamed down her face, but this time they weren't for show. It wasn't a live stream. It wasn't content. It was raw that the judge listened carefully. And after what felt like hours of legal back and forth, the decision was made: CPS would retain temporary custody while Chrisean underwent mandatory parenting programs, drug testing, and supervised visitation. It wasn't the worst outcome, but it wasn't a win either. It was a wake-up call that as she walked out of the courtroom, the cameras were waiting. Reporters shouted questions, but she kept her head down. There was no viral soundbite this time. No dramatic quote. Just silence, for the first time. The loudest girl in the room had nothing left to say. Back home, she sat in the same empty living room where the chaos used to live. The music was gone. The friends were gone. The live streams were off. And in the quiet, the reality finally hit her: she might have lost her baby for good. If she didn't change, the internet will eventually move on to the next scandal. But CPS won't. The timeline had been set. The conditions were clear. Either she proves she can be a stable parent, or she watches someone else raise her child. And for someone who's lived their entire life in public, that might be the most brutal reality of all. And just like that, the noise faded. But the consequences didn't. The same internet that once fueled Chrisean's rise is now watching, silently waiting to see if she rise again, lose everything that truly matters. This isn't just another messy headline, not another viral clip that gets laughed at for a week and forgotten the next. This is real life, a child's life. And once the state steps in, there's no going live to undo it. No quick PR stunt can fix what's broken behind closed doors. The world will keep talking. The blogs will keep posting. The hashtags will keep trending. But in the end, none of that matters. It'll come down to what she does when the cameras are off and no one's watching. So now the real story begins. Will Chrisean fight like a mother who refuses to lose? Or will she crumble beneath the weight of her own chaos? One thing's for sure: the world will be watching every second of it. If you want the truth, the receipts, and the next explosive update. Don't look away now. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this story is only getting darker.